basically, we've got Sarah McCrum to talk to us about this very important topic. She's an author, an educator, an innovator, and Sarah's encouraging abundance and encouraging this, developing this consciousness around abundance, material resources, and creating a positive, wonderful relationship with money. So please make welcome Sarah McCrum.
Thank you. That's a very beautiful, fluffy kind of introduction to my work after the very gritty introduction that we had from Anthony. So I would like to talk about money, and I would like to talk about the energy of money, because I've come to discover that this is a really important topic. And it's a topic that many of us, for a long time myself included, want to ignore. Because it's really obvious why. We look at money in the world and we see all the terrible things that are being done in the name of it. And that's only got worse. If you listen to what Anthony was talking about, every single bit of that practically, except the really far out bits, have a financial agenda underlying them. It's interesting that where he really went to, we get beyond money, we get into a whole lot of other stuff. So we can easily look at it and say, well, money's the problem. And then we reject it. And we've been taught to reject it through so many different traditions. We've been taught to reject it through Christianity. We've been taught to be detached from it through Buddhism. We've been taught to meditate on a mountain with no money. We've been taught to beg in the East, and we've been taught to be poor in the West. And then we've been taught that if you're a good person, you somehow dissociate yourself from money, because money will corrupt you. And then if you make money, somewhere, I have lots of Catholic clients, it's like the guilt and it's like fundamental inside conflict about maybe I'm a bad person, and that if I did something that was aligned with my purpose, I will lose money, I will not be able to make money. And then you have all these good people. I work with lots of really good people, heartfelt, purpose-led people who care desperately about all the things that probably everybody here cares about. And when it comes to actually asking for money or making money or doing something about money, it's like they want to, they need to. Many of them are women, many of them are broke, many of them are divorced, and they haven't done terribly well out of it. But it's like this freeze comes across because it hits this conflict that is so deep inside us that we have no idea what to do about it. And we don't really want to go there, because it's literally kind of like good and evil playing out inside you, and it feels impossible to resolve. And I think when the examples out in the world are so extreme, the wealth on the one side and the poverty on the other side, and then the spiritual and religious paradigms of all the different kinds we see, it is just easier not to face it. So back in December 2010, I was sitting on my bed in a flat in London that I couldn't afford to pay the rent for. I had just had a business failure. In 2000, I'd started a business that was called the Energy Bank. And it was a huge, beautiful, very kind of corporate but very funky premises right in the city of London. And we provided energy, like life energy, to bankers and insurance people and all the people who work in the city. Crazy, crazy people living crazy lifestyles, serving the financial markets, basically. And it's ironic, because at that time I was very switched off from money. I was brought up as a British middle class, don't talk about money, sex, religion, and I think there was something else. And we just didn't. We just, politics, thank you, yeah. We didn't talk about it. People, you know, in these books they say, so what were the things your parents talked about money when you were young? It's like, well, we didn't. I don't have any of that because we never talked. But I had an experience sitting on my bed because it was one of the most painful times of my life. It was not only that I had failed in business. That's tough enough, because what that usually means is you can't pay your bills, you can't serve the clients who've already paid you. You know, it's a really humiliating, horrible experience. Anyone who's had that will know. We had bailiffs at our door one day. I mean, it was awful. But it was much worse because I had a Chinese master at the time. I spent 15 years with one Chinese master and previously 7 years with another Chinese master. So I've done a lot of that stuff Anthony was talking about. She wasn't a guru, she never put herself up as a guru, but she was very powerful, no question about that. And not only had we failed ourselves in business, but we'd failed her. She'd invested in the business, she'd taught us how to do business, she taught us how to do business so that we could pay her lots of money as well, which is actually a very bad model, I learnt. And I had no money. I was running this business. I should at least have had something. I had probably $200 in my pocket. And so we'd let down this person who had taught us some of the most beautiful knowledge that I have ever experienced in my life. So that's the difficult part, the contradiction. She taught me about energy, which is how I live my life. I'm like an energy person. Everything I filter through this lens and knowledge and understanding of energy, steeped in the traditions of the Chinese wisdom. And then at the same time, it didn't work. At some level, it didn't work. But it wasn't that it didn't work, it was that I didn't work. And therefore, there was something wrong with me. And you know what happens when you get into that place? It's really the death of your soul. The minute you start to feel there's something fundamentally wrong with you, or you're tainted, or you're lost in some way. And I had all those things, all those descriptions applied to me from the outside. That is just so painful and so unthinkable, unnavigable. And we all go through it, but it's the worst place for me. So anyway, it was somewhere there, having failed at every level, that I was sitting on my bed, and I had this little book in front of me that had exercises to do. And one of the exercises said, "What would money like to say to you?" And I had one of those little beautiful Moleskine notebooks, you know, with lovely paper. I really like writing on nice paper. And I started writing, and literally my pen took over. I was not writing myself, and I wrote about 2 pages, and it appeared that money was actually talking to me. I had no expectation that money had anything to say to me at all, but it clearly did. And what I would like to do is to share with you what money said to me. But when I click next, the video comes up, does it? There we go.
This is what money would like to say to you. I would like to tell you to love me. Smile at me. Collect me. Enjoy me. Feel my power. Spend me. Invest me. Give me. Pay with me. Take me. I am an energy. I'm very powerful and beautiful. I'm an incredible web of connections. I am light. You're too afraid of me, as you are of many things. You can open up and embrace me fully into your life. It's not too late. You can start now. Just open yourself and say yes. Be brave. Love me. Love yourself so you can accept my power, my glory, my light, my beauty. glorious being of light. I connect human beings with each other. I'm so flexible. You can use me to channel your creativity. Just go ahead. I'm waiting for you. You must open your heart. You're too rigid, too afraid, and there's nothing to be afraid of. You will win not only me, but life also. I'm always here to help you. Just accept me, and I'll come to you very quickly. You've chosen to have more. There's a lot of me waiting for you. Don't wait, just take me. I will love you.
I'm going to suggest you just take a moment and let the message sink into you. See if there's something in there that really caught your attention. Something that maybe it would be worth paying attention to as you move past this summit that we're just starting now. If there's something that's so surprising or so different from how you've ever thought about money before or ever related with money. And if you're one of those people for whom it's really challenging to hear this, just give yourself the space to just open a little bit. My mum was like Anthony's mum. This turned into a book. And at the end she said, yes, there was some very sensible advice in there. It's just like they've always been saying. So just let that message in. If you're one of those people who just basks in the energy of it, allow yourself to bask. It's a very, very beautiful, exquisite energy that I've come to know because after that I started writing every day. I thought, that was a really interesting experience. As I was writing, I was watching the words come out of my pen and I could read them. I wasn't in a trance or anything. But it was only when I read them back that it kind of penetrated into my heart. You know, this little, I wasn't little, I was 40-something person who had completely failed, who'd never really talked about money, who was trying to run a business without talking about money. That doesn't work very well. And then this message comes through and it's like, oh, this is different. And so I started writing. I wrote every day, and about 3/4 of the way through that, I was thinking, you know, what's all this about? And I thought of Neil Donald Walsh at Conversations with God, and I thought, oh, people like that make books about this. Maybe I'm supposed to turn it into a book. So I turned it into a book, and my Chinese master said you can't publish it because she didn't want any publicity. And she was quite controversial in some ways and very dynamic and an amazing person. But anyhow, she said you can't publish it. And I was thinking, but this knowledge is not just for me. I have to share it. And so I made a fake name at that time. I called myself Joy Prospero. And I published my book, Love Money, Money Loves You, and I didn't tell anybody about it. And it was about 9 months before I shared a copy with anybody. I published it for free. I had $200 at that time. I spent $100 on a formatting software, so I could format using Word. I used a terrible old photo on the cover. I made my own cover. I had no skill for any of that kind of stuff. Put it on Amazon and thought, you know, somebody would start buying it, which of course they didn't. And I'm not actually going to tell a kind of rags to riches story here because I don't think that's the interesting part of the story. I think we're past that time of, oh, how to make $1 million or how to become a this or how to become a that, and here's the formula and here's the framework, and if you do this it's going to work. Because if you're like me, you've probably done it and it didn't work. I've had that experience so many times in business that I followed the formula and it didn't work. And it didn't work so spectacularly. Like, I would get they would promise you thousands and thousands of people signing up onto your email list or buying your workshop or whatever, and I wouldn't even get one. It was not like, I got a mediocre result. It was so clearly not the way to do things, or not the way to do things for me. And I've been given such strong lessons. When I moved to Australia in 2012, I moved from New Zealand, where I was with my Chinese master kind of system. My partner and I, we decided to leave. We arrived here with just enough money to get a bond on a rental house and buy a car, cheap car. And then it was like, oh, what are we going to do now? We haven't got any money again, and I've got to have this business. I didn't know a single person in Australia. Funnily enough, the only place I'd been to in Australia before was Mooloolaba. And we were just up the road in Verrierdale. And I went to a business networking event, and it was called the Enlightened Goddesses. I don't know if there are any former enlightened goddesses here. No. I never thought of myself as an enlightened goddess. I just don't really have the goddess look, But anyway, I was invited to the Enlightened Goddesses, and it was a fantastic group of women who they were non-competitive, and they were all in this kind of healing and kind of spiritual and consciousness work. And I gave a door prize, and I won a door prize. I won a prize to get like a little psychic reading in a little booth in the spiritual bookshop in Noosa Junction. And we went in there, and we were in this little kind of room with a dusty curtain. And this woman said, I mentioned my book part of the way through. I was really ashamed of it at the time. And this is really the journey of waking up to more and more levels of capacity, that sometimes it's very frightening to have these kinds of experiences. And people tell you, my Chinese master used to tell us that if you channeled something and then you didn't live up to the message, you would die, literally. So I was so terrified that I would die because I knew I wasn't living up to the message. There's no way I was up to the beauty of what I just played to you. So I just said, okay, well, I'll just put it aside, as though that would be a protection, and maybe I won't die if I really ignore it. I mean, it's crazy, the kinds of things. But I mentioned it by chance, and she said, oh, that's it, Sarah, you have to go and teach about your book. So I started from my having no money, teaching about money and teaching the message, and I was teaching people about energy, and started to build a business around it. And I've been doing that all this time. Actually it's worth talking about, I think, from the earliest days. What I learned was how to ask money, this beautiful energy that I just introduced you to, for what I wanted or for what I needed. And I can remember in the early days sitting there thinking, how are we going to pay the rent this week? And somehow I learnt to ask money to pay it, and it always worked. Now, I'm not going to say to you, you can ask money for $1 million and you'll have it half an hour later. I think we've been through that stage. But there is a fundamental principle in there that if we are able to genuinely, sincerely ask for what we want, it is always heard. And it is always delivered. But what we forget so much of the time is that every single thing that we are thinking and feeling and doing is an ask. At the consciousness level, our stream of consciousness, as it's sometimes called, or often stream of semi-consciousness and unconsciousness, is a kind of ask to the universe, or an ask to the financial system in the intangible, multi-dimensional worlds, for something specific. And so often what we're asking for is like, oh, I really want, this much money, but I don't know how to do it, or I'm not good enough for it, or I'm not worthy of it. And it was literally, I got this image, they're like all these beings somewhere in this multi-dimensional world very close to us, listening and saying, I really want to deliver. They want to deliver to all of us, because it's such a pleasure for them to deliver us things or experiences or contributions, whatever it is that we long for and would love to do. And then they can't, because we keep putting these blocks around it and saying, yeah, I would love that, but I can't. And they're not allowed to deliver anything except what you ask for. And they are like literally, they're much more obedient than we are. They're much more disciplined, they're much more orderly. but they can't break the rules. And we don't really like living that way, which is beautiful. And we wouldn't be in this room if we liked to live according to the rules. But we have to understand that the systems that we work with often are in a really different kind of culture, let's say, or society, however you want to put it, and they have really different rules. And in the case of the system of money, which is really also the system of manifestation and materialization, and ultimately deeply linked into creation, that we are a part of. We're not the operators of it, we are in it. We are it, as is everything else. And therefore our wishes and our desires and our thoughts and our feelings are the communication system to this extraordinary, beautiful energy that is materializing things on this planet. And the one thing that I've learned now from teaching for, 25 years or something, from when I started teaching, and then teaching a lot of people about the energy of money, is that if we don't make it real, if we keep it in kind of 5D and don't bring it into 3D, it's a very unsatisfying experience here. I've come to the conclusion that my soul came here to have a human experience, very here. And that I can access all kinds of extraordinary and beautiful wisdom and knowledge, but if I don't make that real, I've tried so hard. I've had so many visions. I've written so many concepts. My heart kind of bleeds for all the things that I wanted to do and didn't do. Just completely, I had no capacity to bring it here. I kept it all in the energy world. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story of what changed around that, because I think it's really interesting to understand that when we start to engage with a relationship, that went a little quickly. Just leave it there. It's okay. When we start to engage with the energy of money, and because it's an extraordinarily powerful energy, we start to have different dreams. And many people I meet, especially in environments, kind of this kind of thing, I meet people who have extraordinary visions, very beautiful and very powerful. And it's often really disappointing because you feel like I'm never, ever really going to be able to do this, and yet I care about it so passionately. And we know we have to change ourselves, but we also know, I think, and many of us are called, for example, to do business or to run a project or to do something with other people, not only the inner work, but we also want to do the outer work, because it's when we do things together that we feel, we get to express our purpose, and we get all the friction that you get when other people believe different things from you. And I had a conversation in my team yesterday, and we've got somebody new, and she's a very visual person, and I'm much more conceptual. So everything she wants to do, I don't understand, and everything I explain to her, she doesn't understand, because we don't speak each other's language. And then we sort of came together and actually really started to see how we could communicate with each other. That's kind of the beauty of life. This is one of the currencies of life. Money's not the only currency. To connect with people, to understand people who are different from you, to create something together, and to achieve something. Sometimes it's really beautiful to achieve something, and sometimes it's really beautiful to be on that everlasting journey of evolution where you never really, it's kind of like you grow, but you can always see how much more growing there is ahead of you. I think there's room for all of this and so much more. So once you start to engage with money, things start to happen. And it's not only with this energy of money, but when you start waking up, things start to happen, and your desire to do something worthwhile, to contribute something, to create something that, as much as anything, gives you pleasure, gives you a sense of meaning, and gives you a sense of, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to be me, but I'm also here to do something. Because I didn't come here as a soul to have a soul experience. I can do that out there. I can do that, I actually came here in this really weird, clunky, difficult, challenging, ugly, and beautiful world to have an experience that I can only have here. And, you know, here we are, we do things like business, and we have money, and we do awful things sometimes, but we also do beautiful things. And 6.5 years ago, by such an incredible coincidence, I met a man who had a vision about the environment, and he was very, very concerned about climate change. He was very concerned about the temperature, you know, the normal kind of panic. He's an agricultural scientist, and so he's quite knowledgeable. So lots of panic, but he also knew that there was a lot of money available in the world to be invested in environmental and actually social improvement. And he also knew that it wasn't being invested. And if you think of all the projects, the good projects that you've heard of, the good people around the world who are trying to solve problems, probably lots of them desperate for investment, and you think that there are literally trillions of dollars looking for a home, literally. And then you sort of have to start to ask the question, well, what's going on here? And I can understand, I now understand very well why those two worlds don't meet. So when I met Tim Bennett is his name, we started this conversation, and I shared my book with him, and he told me all about his stuff. And the first thing I did to him is I wrote an email and said, look, I love what you're about, but it's not going to work. And he was like this business person, much more businessy than me. I never see myself as a business person, although I am. But he was really like, you know, proper business. And so he's like, what on earth is she talking about? How could she tell me, you know, I know all about the environment, I know all about money, I know all about this. How could she tell me that what I think isn't going to work? And I started to teach him the principles of natural healing, really pure natural healing, because when you learn to heal with energy, you don't use anything. We never used anything. We didn't use herbs, or very rarely. We didn't use supplements. We didn't use any of those kinds of things. Is that my phone ringing? We just did it with pure energy, and you learn these principles of how a system heals itself through its own nature. So I started sharing that. I started sharing the story of money and the energy of money, and he started sharing his business knowledge. And this business came out of it, which was called Love To. And it was about people bringing their love to the things that really matter on the planet, which are thriving and well-being, their nature, our environment, our ecosystem, and all the things that support thriving and well-being. It's so obvious when you think about it. It's quite extraordinary that our economy is based on sickness, insurance against death, insurance against sickness, insurance against catastrophic loss of just about anything, but there's no assurance of health. There's a health system that focuses on being sick, and then there's the kind of alternative self-funded health system. The same with the environment. There is a huge amount of agriculture and land use that is destructive. A tree is only valuable when it's being cut down. It has no value when it's standing, pretty much. There's an entire industry that supports that. Massive, massive amounts of money, and goodness and beauty, I think I could throw in there as well. Much, much more difficult, because although we say we value them, we don't put money into them. And that actually means we don't really value them that much. We haven't made the effort. So we decided we would make the effort to figure out how to value what's living, what's genuinely, truly valuable to the health and well-being of the planet, the environment, and all its inhabitants. It took a lot of rethinking. We literally had to kind of reimagine how you value things. How do you value a living ecosystem in such a way that money can flow to the people who make it into a living ecosystem? How can you value the activities that people do that build the soil, for example, and that build the health of the food that we're growing? How can you value that when the economic system doesn't value it. And so we created a business that's called Love to be Bright Green. That's our first one, Love to be Bright Green. And we made a system where literally money can flow to the people, in this particular case, who are farming regeneratively. So they are rebuilding soil, they clean the water and the air, the water that goes into our rivers and actually ends up as drinking water, the water that goes into the ocean, which has so much silt and so much chemical in it at the moment. It's just like unthinkable that we would act like that as human beings. So we have to clean these things up. We have to clean the air, not keep polluting the air. And farmers are, unfortunately, some of the most extractive, most destructive actors in this whole story. And I'm not going to blame anybody because I think it's just such a complex, complicated situation. But what I've learned is that when we're faced with so many challenges, the only place that I found that could actually really work was to stand up and say, I'm going to do something about it. And so I found myself now in a business with people. We have a really senior Australian banker who is literally talking about, we are creating the foundations for a new economy. Two of us, two Sunshine Coast people, you know, me just like teach nice people how to be conscious about money, have a lovely relationship with money. It works, it's really powerful stuff, but you know, not really made for international, big scale business, at least not, you know, the way I grew up. And this other person, Tim, who had all this knowledge, but like so many entrepreneurial people, you know, they have all the ideas, but how do you turn such new ideas into something that's actually real? And so that's what we've been doing, and people are now gravitating towards this message. We've had to go into worlds that, like this time last year, we were saying we will never touch crypto. We will never touch all of that stuff, that's crazy stuff, which it's crazy stuff. But it's also, there's a movement behind it for sovereignty and freedom and a new way of transacting with each other. And one day, I think it was probably about a year ago exactly, it was in June last year, I just got this really strong message. We have to go there. We have to get engaged with this. And we ended up developing a token. It's based on a kind of crypto system because we can use these really new systems, but it's completely different because it has in it the value of ecological improvement that's been done by people. So instead of having a gold standard like we used to have, we have now what we think of as a bright green standard, which is literally that there is a token, money's kind of like a token, that is backed by environmental improvement. We call it a bright green. And the reason why this is important, what I'm really wanting to say here, is that once you start to engage with the energy of money, your life changes and things start to become possible that have so often felt impossible because actually, you know, we just didn't have enough money and we didn't think about how to do it. And so we couldn't do the things that we dreamt of because we cut off the very source of energy that was going to make that possible. So everybody here will have a different experience with money, different aspirations, and a different journey. But I really want to say that money is not the enemy that most of us have either consciously or unconsciously thought that it was. It is an extraordinarily beautiful energy. The more you get to know it, the more you find you're having conversations just like I did. My clients kind of just, you know, they connect with money and they come back and they say the same kinds of things that I say because it's a consistent energy and voice in our life. It's really worth getting to know it. You can have a conversation with it any time. You might be surprised how willing it is to talk to you. And little by little, no big promises here, little by little, you find yourself changing. You relax about money because you realize it's better to be relaxed than it is to be stressed. You open to money because you realize it's better to be open than it is to be closed. These are so simple and sometimes so hard to do. And you start to enjoy your life more because you realize that when you're enjoying, things tend to flow more and you're more receptive and everything works better And then you get really stressed about stuff because you take on bigger challenges. That's what I did, took on these big challenges. It's like, oh my goodness, I have this beautiful vision. I didn't think it was going to be this hard. It's really hard sometimes, but it's beautiful to do something that's hard with other people that is worthwhile. And money makes that possible. I don't believe that we will change the paradigm on this planet if we don't change our paradigm around money. And I've spoken now with people one guy who pretty much advises some of the evil people that Anthony was talking about. I've spoken with people who are at the top of industry and heard them talking about our relationship with money, and that if we don't heal our relationship with money, we will not make the kind of change we need to make. So that's what I stand for, is that it is possible to have an economy, and therefore our individual activities all the way down to how we relate with money as an individual, that supports health and well-being, that protects the planet, and that gives human beings dignity and allows us to align with our own deepest human and spiritual values. And I would like to end by sharing a video with you that I think speaks really powerfully to where we are now. It's very important that we remember all the time now that we do not have the answers. If we think we have the answers and we don't have the solution, we're just wrong. And it's so important and it's so beautiful to be able to be in that place where you don't have to have all the answers. And some of you here, I'm sure, are used to being surrounded by people who have all the answers. Or if you're like me, you used to be the person who thought you had all the answers. But we're in a very different world now, and the most exhilarating conversations happen, I find, when we let go of thinking we know what's right and thinking we've got it, and thinking that my piece is the right piece, and that we bring our piece. My piece is this money piece, the energy of money, and how can we make that work? Your piece is something completely different. And when our pieces come together, we can make, not just dream of, but actually make a society that works better for all of us. So, step forward with me. We're going into a different space. We're going to put one foot in front of the other. Moving through life onto the edge of the unknown. Your whole experience sits behind you. A mountain of knowledge. Your strength, your achievements, and all your learning. And in front of you lies what? Maybe you think you know. But in truth, do we ever really know? So let's be here for a while, on the edge of the unknown,
space between the past and the future. Fully present, fully alive in this moment. Free of all your knowledge and yet strengthened by it. Unconstrained by all your plans. And yet facing forward into the unknown. Step by step. Walking into your life as life moves through you. This is the wild place. The place where you're raw. Open. This is the place of playful creativity. It's the place of delight and surprise. This is the place of your innocence. Where you find yourself revealed for who you really are. We are on the edge of the unknown. We are in the pure wilderness of our inner life. We are alive. So let's put one foot in front of the other as we walk forward on the edge of the unknown.
I would say, have courage. It isn't always easy. It is really beautifully simple when we get on the other side of it being difficult. But it's worthwhile. I invite you sincerely to look at your relationship with money. And if it feels like there's a distance, there's a stony silence, it feels unpredictable, unsafe, or any of the other things that we experience in so many of our relationships, know that there is a beautiful energy that is always here. It is always love, always. It is always rooting for you, and that if you can discover through exploration how to open to and be present to that energy in your life, you will find that your life unfolds for you in ways that are more and more surprising, delightful, and beautiful. Thank you.